She thanked another man at her birthday party. I took back my gift and walked out. 3 days later, our son collapsed. The blood test that saved his life destroyed mine. That's when I realized the woman I'd built everything for had been playing a game I didn't even know existed. My name is Elliot Bancroft. I'm 40 years old, and I've spent the last 12 years building a reputation as one of Seattle's most trusted independent financial consultants. My clients are the kind of people who don't ask how much something costs because they already know they can afford it. Tech executives, real estate moguls, a couple of minor celebrities. I'd worked my tail off to get there, and I'd done it with integrity. That word meant something to me. Used to, anyway. My wife Tasha is 35, gorgeous in that effortless way that makes other women hate her, and men stumble over their words. She runs a social media marketing agency that's been blowing up over the past 2 years. Brand partnerships, influencer campaigns, the whole 9 yards. Her Instagram alone has over 200,000 followers. She's the kind of woman who walks into a room and owns it within 5 minutes. We met at a charity gala 9 years ago. I was there representing a client. She was running the event's digital campaign. She had this laugh that could cut through a crowded room, and when she turned those green eyes on me, I was done for. We got married 18 months later in a ceremony that got featured in Seattle Bride magazine. 3 years ago, our son Leo was born. Watching him take his first breath was the proudest moment of my life. I'd never felt more like a man than I did holding that tiny human, knowing I'd do anything to protect him. But marriage is like a building, isn't it? You can have the prettiest facade in the world, but if the foundation's rotting underneath, eventually the whole thing comes down. Last month was Tasha's 35th birthday. She wanted to go big, so we rented out the rooftop terrace at the Edgewater. Panoramic views of Elliott Bay, string lights, a jazz quartet, 200 of Seattle's finest drinking champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's car payments. I'd spent weeks planning it, making sure every detail was perfect. Her gift was a vintage Cartier bracelet I'd found at an estate sale, something she'd mentioned wanting years ago when we were still broke and dreaming. When it came time for the toast, Tasha stood up with a champagne flute in her hand. The lights caught her silver dress just right, and for a moment, she looked like something from a dream. My dream. I want to thank someone special, she said, smiling that megawatt smile. Someone who's been there for me, believed in me, pushed me when I needed it most. I was already smiling, ready for that moment of public affection. Then she turned and looked at him. Adrian Rhodes, her business partner. The guy I'd helped with his portfolio 2 years ago as a favor to her. Adrian, she said, raising her glass higher, thank you for everything. The applause that followed felt like a physical blow. I sat there, the bracelet box burning a hole in my jacket pocket, watching my wife thank another man at her own birthday party while I became invisible. I didn't make a scene. I stood up, walked over to where she'd set her gifts on a table, picked up the small Cartier box I'd placed there an hour earlier, and left. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words ever could. 3 days after the party, everything changed. Not because of what happened at the Edgewater, though that was still eating at me like acid. No, what changed everything was a phone call at 2:17 a.m. Leo couldn't breathe. Tasha was screaming into the phone, hysterical in a way I'd never heard before. He's turning blue, Elliot. His face is swelling. Oh God, oh God. I was out of my downtown apartment, and in the car before my brain fully processed what was happening. We'd been separated since the party, me staying at a corporate rental while she kept the house. I made it to Swedish Medical Center in 15 minutes, probably broke every traffic law in King County. They had Leo in the ER, oxygen mask strapped his tiny face, his body looking so small on that hospital bed. Tasha was pacing like a caged animal, mascara streaking down her face. For a moment, all the anger evaporated. This was our son. Nothing else mattered. Severe allergic reaction. The doctor said, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. We've stabilized him, but we need to run comprehensive tests. We'll need blood samples from both parents for comparison and to determine the exact allergen profile. Whatever you need, I said immediately. They drew our blood right there. Tasha held Leo's hand while I stood on the other side of the bed, and for a few hours, we were almost like a family again. Almost. The doctor came back around 6 a.m. Leo was sleeping peacefully, the crisis passed, but something in her expression made my stomach drop. He's going to be fine, she said first, and I felt my lungs remember how to work. But we need to discuss something unusual that came up in the blood work. Tasha looked up from Leo's bedside. What kind of unusual? The doctor hesitated, and that hesitation stretched out like a canyon opening up beneath my feet. Mr. Bancroft, I need to ask you something directly. Are you aware of your blood type? Oh, positive, I said. Why? And yours, Mrs. Bancroft? A negative, Tasha whispered, and something in her voice had changed. Gone flat. The doctor glanced between us. Your son has AB negative blood. That's not genetically possible given your blood types. There's absolutely no way. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of Leo's bed to keep from falling. What are you saying? I'm saying that based on these blood types, Mr. Bancroft cannot be the biological father of this child. The words hit like a physical blow. I heard them, understood them on some level, but my brain refused to process them. This was Leo, my son, the kid who called me daddy and fell asleep on my chest during football games. The boy I'd rocked at 3 a.m. when he had nightmares. I turned to Tasha slowly. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at Leo, her face drained of all color. Tasha, my voice came out strangled. Look at me. I need to make a call, she said abruptly, standing up. I need some air. Don't you dare walk away from me right now. But she was already moving toward the door, and I realized with horrifying clarity that she wasn't surprised. She'd known. Maybe not about the blood type specifically, but she'd known there was a possibility. Known and said nothing while I changed diapers and paid for daycare and planned for his college fund. Mrs. Bancroft, I really think we should discuss. The doctor started. I'll be right back, Tasha interrupted, her voice shaking. She pushed through the door and disappeared into the hallway. I stood there in that hospital room, watching my son sleep peacefully, and felt my entire world fracture into pieces. The doctor was saying something about genetic testing and counseling services, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. Leo stirred, made a small sound, and my hand moved automatically to smooth his hair back. The gesture I'd done 1,000 times before. Only now everything was different. Or maybe nothing was different. Maybe I'd just been living in a lie so complete that reality itself had a break before I could see it. I didn't chase Tasha down the hospital corridor. Instead, I stood there with Leo sleeping peacefully in front of me, and I made a decision. A cold, calculated one. The kind you make when emotion would only cloud what needs to be done. I pulled out my phone and called my attorney, Richard Walsh. We'd done business together for years, handled estate planning for several of my clients. It was 6:30 a.m., but Rich answered on the third ring. Elliot, everything okay? I need a paternity test. Confidential. Fast as possible. My voice was steady, mechanical, and I need you to recommend a private investigator. The best one you know. There was a pause. What's going on? Just had some interesting news at the hospital. Turns out blood types don't lie, even when people do. Jesus. Okay, I know a guy. Former FBI. Discreet as they come. I'll text you his contact in 5 minutes. Thanks, Rich. And one more thing. Start preparing divorce paperwork. Don't file yet. Just have it ready. When Tasha finally came back 20 minutes later, her eyes were red but dry. She composed herself, put the mask back on. But I could see the calculation happening behind those green eyes. She was figuring out her next move. Elliot, we need to talk, she started. Not here. I kept my voice low, controlled. Not in front of Leo. He's asleep. I don't care. We're going to the cafeteria. Now. She followed me down 2 floors. The cafeteria was nearly empty, just a few exhausted-looking residents grabbing coffee between shifts. We sat in a corner booth, and I waited. Let her speak first. Let her dig her own grave. I can explain, she said finally. Then explain. Tell me why my son isn't my son. She flinched at the word my, and I felt a savage satisfaction in that. It was a mistake. One time, I was confused. We were fighting and... Don't. I held up a hand. Don't insult me by pretending this was some drunken accident. One time doesn't explain why you let me believe for 3 years that Leo was mine. He is yours. Her voice rose, and a resident glanced over. She lowered it again. You're the only father he's ever known. Biology doesn't change that. Biology changes everything. It changes every diaper I changed at 3 a.m. Every nightmare I comforted him through. Every dollar in his college fund. You turned my love for that boy into a weapon against me. That's not fair. Fair. I leaned forward. You want to talk about fair? How about the fact that I've been raising another man's child while you paraded around Seattle playing the perfect wife and mother? How about the fact that you thanked your business partner, your affair partner, at your own birthday party while I sat there like an idiot? Her face went white. Adrian and I, we're not. Save it. I'm getting a paternity test. A legal one that'll hold up in court. And depending on what else I find, you might want to start thinking about getting your own attorney. You're going to use Leo as a pawn? Really, Elliot? That's the kind of man you are. I stood up slowly, looking down at her. I'm the kind of man who spent 3 years being a father to a child who deserved one. But I'm also the kind of man who doesn't let betrayal slide just because it comes wrapped in a pretty package. You wanted to play games? Fine. But understand this. I don't lose games. I end them. I walked away, leaving her sitting there with her practiced tears and her hollow explanations. The PI's name was Thomas Grant. By noon, he'd already started surveillance on Tasha and Adrian. By the end of the week, I'd have my paternity results. And by the end of the month, I'd know exactly how deep this rabbit hole went. Because if there's one thing I learned building my career, it's this. Information is power. And I was about to become very, very powerful. Derek Fisher showed up at my apartment that evening unannounced. We'd been friends since freshman year at UW, roommates for 3 years, best man at each other's weddings. He was one of maybe 5 people I trust with my life. The look on his face when I opened the door told me he already knew something. You look like hell, he said, pushing past me with a 6-pack of beer. Thanks for the observation. We sat on my rental's sad excuse for a balcony, looking out over downtown Seattle. The Space Needle glowed in the distance. All those tourists up there thinking Seattle was romantic. They didn't know anything. Derek cracked a beer, handed it to me. Heard about Leo. Is he okay? Physically? Yeah. The rest of it. I took a long drink. That's more complicated. Elliot, man, I need to tell you something. And you're going to hate me for not telling you sooner. My stomach dropped. What? Derek's jaw worked like he was chewing broken glass. 8 months ago, I saw something. Tasha and some guy, having lunch at Canlis. I thought maybe it was a business thing, but the way they were sitting, the way she was leaning in. He shook his head. It didn't look like business. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to. His voice broke. I came by your office the next day, ready to lay it all out. But Tasha was there. She was picking you up for lunch, and you two were laughing about something, and I chickened out. I want to be angry. Part of me was. But I could hear the guilt eating at him. That's not all, is it? Derek set his beer down, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. 2 weeks later, Tasha showed up at my place. You were in San Francisco for that tech conference. She said she wanted to talk about what I'd seen. And she told me she knew I'd spotted her with Adrian. Said it was innocent, but admitted it looked bad. Then He stopped, his hands shaking slightly. Man, this is going to sound insane. Just say it. She came on to me. Hard. Said if I was going to tell you about Adrian, she might as well give me something worth talking about. Derek looked at me, his eyes hollow. I told her to get the hell out. But Elliot, she recorded it. The whole conversation. Took her phone out after I rejected her, and said she'd tell you I tried to force myself on her if I breathed a word about Adrian. The beer in my hand suddenly felt very heavy. She blackmailed you. She showed me the video. The angle makes it look like I was the one coming on her. My hand on the doorframe could be me blocking her exit. Her backing up could be her trying to get away. He put his face in his hands. I've been living in hell for 8 months, knowing you were being played and not being able to say a damn word. I sat there processing. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated, premeditated. Tasha had seen Derek as a threat and neutralized him with the precision of a damn chess master. Do you still have your copy of the video? I asked quietly. She texted it to me. Said to remember what I had to lose. Forward it to me. Right now. Derek pulled out his phone, his hands still shaking. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop playing defense. I watched the file transfer notification pop up on my screen. She wants to treat this like a war. Fine. But she just gave me ammunition. We sat there in silence for a while, 2 grown men who'd shared everything from college hangovers to the births of our kids. And I realized something. Tasha hadn't just betrayed me. She'd weaponized everything good in my life and turned it against me. That was her first mistake. Her second was thinking I'd just take it. The paternity test results arrived by courier on a Tuesday morning. Legal, certified, impossible to dispute. As expected, I was not Leo's biological father. Probability, 0%. I sat with that document for exactly 10 minutes, letting the finality of it settle into my bones. Then I called Thomas Graham, my PI. I need you to run a DNA comparison, I said. I'm sending you a sample I collected from Adrian Rhodes' car. Already on it, Thomas replied. But Elliot, there's something you should see first. Can you meet me in my office in an hour? His office was in a nondescript building in Fremont, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. Thomas was ex-FBI, mid-50s, with the kind of face that blended into any crowd. Perfect for his line of work. He slid a manila folder across his desk. That's 2 weeks of surveillance on your wife and Adrian Rhodes. And brother, this is messier than you think. I opened the folder. Photos of Tasha and Adrian at restaurants, entering hotels, leaving her agency office together late at night. Standard affair documentation. But Thomas was watching me with an expression that said the worst was coming. Adrian Rhodes isn't the father either, he said bluntly. My hand froze halfway to turning a page. What? I managed to get a DNA sample from Rhodes. Coffee cup he left at a Starbucks. Ran it against Leo's hospital blood work that you provided. Thomas leaned back in his chair. He's not a match. Not even close. The room tilted slightly. Then who? That's where it gets interesting. I pulled your wife's financial records, the ones you authorized me to access. Found some unusual charges from about 4 years ago. Medical bills from a clinic in Portland. Fertility treatments, but not the kind couples do together. He slid another document across. Invoices from a sperm bank. Consultation fees for directed donor selection. My wife had been shopping for genetic material like she was picking out furniture. She went to a sperm bank. Not exactly. This clinic specializes in what they call discrete arrangements. Basically, wealthy women who want children but don't want the legal complications of a known donor. They select based on profiles, education, appearance, health history. The donors are anonymous, and the records are sealed tighter than Fort Knox. I stare at the papers, my mind struggling to process. So Leo's father is some anonymous donor she picked from a catalog. Looks that way. But here's the kicker. Thomas pulled out another photo. This is Dr. James Reinhardt. He runs the clinic. And this, he tapped another image, is him having dinner with your wife 3 months before Leo was born. Very friendly. Very familiar. You think the doctor is the father. I think your wife has a pattern of getting exactly what she wants by any means necessary. Whether Reinhardt is the biological father or just helped her navigate the system, I can't say without his DNA. But the timeline suggests she was planning this pregnancy very carefully, and you were never part of the actual equation. I sat back, feeling like I'd been punched. She created Leo specifically to trap me. Can't prove intent, but the evidence suggests she wanted a child on her terms, with genetics she selected, while maintaining the appearance of a traditional family. Thomas's expression was grim. The affair with Rhodes came later. I've got evidence of that starting about 18 months ago. My guess. Once she had the baby and the financial security of her marriage, she felt free to pursue what she actually wanted, which was Adrian, among others. He slid over another stack of photos. Different men, different restaurants. Your wife has been very busy, Elliot. Rhodes is just the most consistent. I looked through the images, each one a hammer blow. Tasha laughing with a man at a wine bar. Tasha leaving a downtown apartment building at midnight. Tasha in a car with someone who definitely wasn't me or Adrian. How many? I asked quietly. That I can document. For different men over the past 2 years. But I've only been on this for 2 weeks. Given more time, there might be more. I closed the folder, my hand steady despite the rage building inside me. I need you to find out everything you can about that clinic and Dr. Reinhardt. If there's any way to identify Leo's biological father, I want it found. That's going to be nearly impossible with privacy laws. I don't care about impossible. I care about the truth. I stood up, straightening my jacket. And Thomas, I need you to document everything. Every affair, every lie, every manipulation. Build me a case so airtight that when this goes to court, she won't have anywhere to hide. What about Leo? Thomas asked. You know, a judge might still order you to pay support, given that you're on the birth certificate and have established paternity through care and provision. I know, and I'll deal with that if it comes. I headed for the door, then paused. But I'm not going to let her use that boy as a weapon against me anymore. She wanted to play games with people's lives? Fine. But she just lost the only person who was playing fair. 3 days later, I got a call from James Thornton, one of my oldest clients. He ran a tech startup worth about $50 million, and I'd been managing his personal investments for 6 years. Elliot, we need to talk. In person. Now. His tone set off alarm bells. What's wrong? Just get here. My office. 20 minutes. I made it in 15. James was pacing his corner office like a caged animal, his usually calm demeanor shattered. He shoved a printed email across his desk at me. Explain this. The email was professional, well-written, and completely devastating. It claimed I'd been accepting kickbacks from investment firms, steering clients toward funds that paid me under the table, and falsifying documentation to hide my tracks. The sender was anonymous, but the details were specific enough to sound credible. This is a lie, I said immediately. Every single word. I know that. James ran a hand through his hair. I've known you for 6 years, Elliot. I know your reputation. But I'm not the only one who got this email. At least 15 of your clients received it this morning. My phone's been ringing off the hook. My blood ran cold. 15. That's just the ones who call me to verify. There might be more. He sat down heavily. Someone's trying to destroy you, man. And they're doing a damn good job of it. I pulled out my phone and checked my email. Sure enough, my inbox was flooded. Clients asking for clarification. Some demanding immediate meetings. 2 had already sent termination letters. Adrian Rhodes, I said quietly. Your wife's business partner? Why would he? James stopped, understanding dawning. Oh hell. He's also her affair partner. And apparently, he's decided that ruining my marriage wasn't enough. I scrolled through the emails, my jaw clenching. He wants to destroy my livelihood too. Can you prove he sent these? Not yet, but I will. I stood up. James, I need you to do me a favor. Send out an email to anyone else you know who might have received this. Tell them I'm aware of the accusations, and I'm pursuing legal action against the source. Tell them my records are open for independent audit by any CPA they choose. That's bold. That's confidence. Because every word in that email is fabricated, and an audit will prove it. I headed for the door. And James, thank you for calling me first instead of just believing it. You've earned that much. But Elliot, move fast. In this business, reputation is everything, and rumors spread faster than truth. I called Thomas Grant from my car. Adrian Rhodes just declared war. I need everything you can find on his business dealings, his finances, his emails. Everything. Already ahead of you, Thomas said. I've been monitoring his digital footprint since you hired me. And buddy, you're going to love this. Rhodes isn't exactly clean himself. He's been skimming from his own clients, hiding income from the IRS, and running what looks like a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Can you prove it? With about 2 more days of work? Absolutely. Then do it. Because I'm not just going to defend myself. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Adrian Rhodes really is. I hung up and drove straight to my office. My assistant, Jennifer, looked up with worried eyes as I walked in. Mr. Bancroft, we've had 17 calls this morning. Clients are. I know. Get me Richard Walsh on the phone, then draft an email for my approval. We're going on offense. By into business that day, I contacted every single client personally, offered full transparency, independent audits, and legal recourse if anyone felt they'd been wronged. Not a single one of them could find any evidence to support the anonymous claims because there wasn't any. But more importantly, I filed a defamation lawsuit against John Doe with a subpoena for the email server records that would inevitably lead back to Adrian Rhodes. He wanted to play dirty? Fine. But he just made the mistake of targeting a man who built his entire career on trust, transparency, and documentation. And unlike him, I had nothing to hide. My mother called on a Thursday afternoon. I almost didn't answer because I knew what was coming. She'd been silent for 2 weeks since news of the separation hit the family grapevine, and that silence was more damning than any lecture could have been. Elliot, we need to talk about this situation with Tasha, she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of disappointment she perfected over 40 years of motherhood. There's nothing to talk about, Mom. She cheated. She lied about Leo's paternity. It's over. Marriage is a commitment before God, not something you throw away the moment it gets difficult. She paused, and I could practically see her sitting in her perfectly decorated living room in Bellevue, my father probably hovering nearby with his own opinions ready. Your father, and I think you're being hasty. Every marriage goes through rough patches. Rough patches? I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. Mom, she let me raise another man's child for 3 years without telling me the truth. That's not a rough patch. That's betrayal on a fundamental level. That boy calls you daddy. Are you really going to abandon him because of biology? The words hit exactly where she intended. I'm not abandoning Leo, but I'm also not going to pretend that what Tasha did was acceptable just because it's uncomfortable for you to admit your daughter-in-law is a liar. Don't speak about her that way. Tasha made a mistake, yes, but she's been a good wife to you, a good mother. And right now, she needs support, not judgment. I stood up from my desk, paced to the window of my office. Outside, Seattle was doing its usual gray drizzle thing, perfectly matching my mood. Did she tell you about Adrian? About the other men? About the fact that she's been systematically draining our bank accounts to fund her affairs? Silence. Then, she explained that those were business expenses you misunderstood. Of course she did. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. And you believed her. I believe in the sanctity of marriage. I believe that a real man doesn't walk away from his family the first time things get hard. Your father stuck by me through much worse, and we've been married for 43 years. Dad never had to question whether his children were actually his children. Biology isn't what makes a father, Elliot. Love is. Commitment is. And right now, you're showing Leo that love is conditional. That family can be discarded when it becomes inconvenient. The words burned because somewhere deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, they landed. I did love Leo. 3 years of midnight feedings and first steps in bedtime stories don't just evaporate because of a blood test. But that love had been built on a foundation of lies, and I didn't know how to separate the two. What do you want from me, Mom? I want you to think about that little boy who's going to grow up wondering why his daddy left. I want you to consider that forgiveness is a virtue, not a weakness. And I want you to be man enough to put your pride aside and save your family. My pride, the anger I've been controlling, broke through. This isn't about pride. This is about being lied to, manipulated, and used. Tasha didn't make a mistake. She made a series of calculated choices over years, and every single one of them was designed to deceive me. Then be the bigger person. Show her what real love looks like. Real love doesn't require one person to be a doormat for the other's betrayal. I took a breath. I need to go. Tell Dad I'll call him later. Elliot James Bancroft. Don't you dare hang up on. I ended the call and immediately got another one. My sister Audrey. Please tell me Mom didn't just call you and take Tasha's side. Audrey said without preamble. She did. That woman is unbelievable. I heard rustling, like Audrey was moving to somewhere more private. Elliot, I need to tell you something, and you're probably going to be furious that I didn't say it sooner. My stomach dropped. What? I saw them. Tasha and Adrian. Last year, at that charity gala at the Four Seasons. You were in San Francisco meeting with clients. I was there with David for his firm's table. Audrey's voice shook. They were dancing. Not like business associates. Like lovers. And when I confronted her about it later, she told me I was mistaken. That Adrian was helping her with a surprise for your birthday. Why didn't you tell me? Because I tried, Elliot. 3 times. But every time I brought up anything negative about Tasha, you defended her so hard that I backed off. And then she started avoiding family gatherings where I'd be present. She knew I'd seen something, and she froze me out. Audrey's voice broke. I've been carrying this guilt for months, watching you with her, knowing what I knew and not being able to prove it without destroying your life. I leaned my forehead against the window, the cool glass grounding me. She isolated you, systematically, told you I was being judgmental, made comments about how I was jealous of your success. Little things that added up until you started pulling away from me too. She paused. I'm so sorry, Elliot. I should have fought harder to make you hear me. She's a professional manipulator. You're not the first person she neutralized. I told her about Derek, about the blackmail and the video, about how Tasha had turned anyone who might expose her into either an accomplice or a threat. My God, she's a sociopath. No, she's just someone who's very good at getting what she wants and doesn't care who she hurts in the process. I turned from the window. Audrey, I need you to do something for me. I need you to write down everything you remember about that night. Dates, times, what they were wearing, who else was there. Everything. For the divorce. For the truth. Because I'm done letting her control the narrative. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my office and realized something. Tasha hadn't just betrayed me. She'd systematically dismantled every support system I had, one person at a time, until I was isolated enough to be controlled. My mother believed her lies. My sister had been silenced. My best friend had been blackmailed. She'd spent years building a cage around me, so perfectly that I hadn't even noticed the bars. But cages only work if you don't know you're in one. And now that I could see it clearly, I also saw the door. James Crawford's office called on a Monday morning with news that made my blood run cold. Mr. Bancroft, we need to discuss the paternity issue and its legal implications, his paralegal said. Can you come in this afternoon? I cleared my schedule and was there by 2 p.m. Richard sat across from me with the kind of expression lawyers get when they're about to deliver news that'll change your life, and not for the better. I've consulted with 3 family law specialists, he began, spreading documents across his desk. Washington state law is very clear on this issue, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're legally obligated to continue supporting Leo, even though he's not mine, especially because you're listed on the birth certificate and have acted as his father for 3 years. Under Washington law, you've established paternity through your actions. The state presumes you're the father until you successfully disestablish paternity, and that window closed after 2 years. I stared at him. You're telling me I'm trapped. I'm telling you the law prioritizes the child's best interests over biological facts in cases like this. You've bonded with Leo, provided for him, acted as his parent. The court isn't going to penalize the child for the mother's deception. Richard pulled out a calculator. Based on your income and Washington's child support guidelines, you're looking at approximately $2,500 per month until Leo turns 18. That's over $500,000. $450,000, to be exact, plus potential contributions to college expenses if Tasha pursues that through modification later. He leaned back. I know this feels unjust, Elliot, and morally, you're absolutely right to be outraged. But legally, your options are extremely limited. There has to be something we can do. We can argue for reduced support based on her fraud and misconduct. We can push for joint custody, so you're not paying support while being denied access. We can absolutely use her behavior to influence property division and alimony. He paused. But the baseline reality is that you will be financially responsible for that child until he's an adult, regardless of biology. I sat there, letting it sink in. Tasha had trapped me perfectly. Even if I walked away from the marriage, even if I proved every lie she'd told, I'd still be paying for her deception for the next 15 years. What if we can prove she committed fraud? I asked. That she deliberately deceived me about paternity? It might influence the judge's decisions on other matters, but it won't eliminate child support obligations. The law sees Leo as an innocent party who needs financial support, and right now, you're legally his father. Richard's expression softened. I'm sorry, Elliot. This is one of those situations where doing the right thing as a parent has put you in a legally vulnerable position. My phone buzzed. A text from Tasha. We need to talk about Leo. He's asking for you. I showed it to Richard. And so it begins. The manipulation through the kid. Do you want to see Leo? The question hit harder than it should have. Of course I wanted to see him. 3 years don't just disappear because of biology. But every interaction with Leo meant interacting with Tasha, and she knew it. She was using that bond as leverage. Yeah, I said finally. But on my terms, with my attorney present to document everything. Richard nodded. I'll draft a temporary custody arrangement proposal. We'll offer supervised visitation at a neutral location until permanent orders are established. It protects you legally while allowing you to maintain the relationship. And if she refuses, then we file for emergency custody hearing and let a judge decide. But Elliot, you need to understand something. He leaned forward. Every decision you make now will be scrutinized later. If you walk away from Leo completely, Tasha will use that to paint you as vindictive and cruel. If you fight for custody, she'll claim you're doing it to avoid support. You need to be strategic about every move. I'm paying $450,000 for a child who isn't mine, and I still have to be strategic. Welcome to family law. It's not about justice. It's about minimizing damage. I left Richard's office feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The legal system that was supposed to protect people had instead created a scenario where Tasha's lies were rewarded and my years of devoted fatherhood had become a financial prison. My phone rang. Thomas Grant, my PI. "I've got something on Adrian Rhodes you're going to want to hear," he said. "Turns out he's not just stealing your wife. He's been stealing from his own company. I've got evidence of embezzlement dating back 3 years. We're talking about $200,000 in misappropriated funds." A cold smile spread across my face. "Can you prove it?" "Financial records don't lie. He's been smart about hiding it, but not smart enough. I've already contacted the company's CFO anonymously. They're launching an internal investigation as we speak." "Good. Let them eat each other. Because if I was going to be trapped in this nightmare for the next 15 years, I was damn sure going to make certain Tasha and Adrian paid for putting me here." My father died on a Wednesday morning. Massive heart attack, gone before the paramedics arrived. He was 68, still healthy enough to play golf twice a week, and the shock of it left me numb for days. The funeral was surreal. Tasha showed up with Leo, playing the grieving daughter-in-law to perfection. She kept her distance from me, but made sure everyone saw her comforting my mother, saw Leo placing flowers on the casket. It was a performance, and she played it flawlessly. I didn't have the energy to fight her. Not then. I was too busy trying to process the fact that the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and throw a baseball was gone. 2 weeks later, Richard Walsh called me into his office for the reading of the will. My mother was there, my sister Audrey, and to my surprise, Tasha, sitting beside my mother like she belonged there. "Your father updated his will 6 months ago," Richard began, his expression carefully neutral. "The changes are significant." He distributed copies, and I scanned down to the relevant section. Then I read it again because it couldn't possibly say what I thought it said. The house in Bellevue, worth approximately $850,000. My father's investment portfolio, another $600,000. His life insurance policy, $400,000. All of it, every single dollar, left in trust for Leo Bancroft, with Tasha named as trustee until Leo's 18th birthday. "What?" The word came out strangled. Richard's voice was carefully controlled. "Your father established an irrevocable trust for his grandson. Tasha will manage the assets until Leo reaches majority." "That's nearly $2 million, I said, my voice rising. "Left to a child who isn't even his biological grandson, managed by a woman who's been lying to all of us for years." My mother's face was stone. "Your father wanted to ensure Leo's future was secure. What did he change the will? When did she convince him to do this?" Richard checked his notes. "The documents were executed on March 15th, 6 months ago." March. Right around the time Tasha would have known I was starting to suspect something. Right when she would have been securing her exit strategy. "She manipulated him," I said flatly. "She knew I was getting close to the truth, so she convinced Dad to lock down assets she could control." "Your father was of sound mind when he made these decisions," Richard said carefully. "I was present for the signing. He was clear about his intentions." "What did she tell him? What lies did she feed him to make him cut out his own son?" My mother finally spoke, her voice cold. "Your father was concerned about your behavior, Elliot. Tasha came to us several months ago, worried about your mental state. Said you'd become paranoid, accusatory. That she was afraid for Leo's safety." The room tilted. "She told you I was dangerous. She showed us messages you'd sent her. Angry texts, threats about taking Leo away. Your father wanted to make sure Leo would be protected regardless of what happened between you and Tasha. Those texts were about getting custody during the divorce, about not letting her use him as a weapon." I turned to Audrey. "You know this is insane, right?" My sister looked away. "I told Dad to wait, to hear your side, but he was convinced you were having some kind of breakdown." I stood up, needing to move, needing air. "So let me understand this. Tasha lies about paternity, has multiple affairs, steals hundreds of thousands of dollars, and somehow I'm the villain? She poisons my relationship with my father, and he rewards her by making her a millionaire trustee. The money is for Leo, not for her," my mother said. "It's the same thing. She controls it for the next 15 years. She can pay herself a trustee fee, use trust assets to maintain Leo's lifestyle, which conveniently happens to be her lifestyle too." I looked at Richard. "Can we challenge this?" On what grounds? Your father was competent. Multiple witnesses can attest to that. The trust is ironclad. He paused. I'm sorry, Elliot, but unless you can prove undue influence, which is nearly impossible with a deceased settler, this stands. I walked out of that office knowing I'd lost more than my father. I'd lost any chance of justice. Tasha had played a long game I hadn't even known we were in, and she'd won before I'd realized we were competing. Thomas Grant was waiting in my car when I got back to the parking garage. He held up his phone. I've got Adrian Rhodes on embezzlement charges. The company filed a police report this morning. He's looking at 5 to 10 years if convicted. It was something. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was something. And Tasha? I asked. I'm still digging. But people like her, they always make mistakes eventually. We just have to be patient. Patient. I've been patient for 3 years while my wife destroyed my life brick by brick. But patience hadn't protected me. Documentation had. Evidence had. Keep digging, I said, because she might have won this round, but I'm not done fighting. 14 months after that birthday party, I stood in front of a different kind of audience. Not family, not friends, but a room full of men who'd been through their own versions of hell. The divorce support group met every Thursday at a community center in Ballard. 20 guys, ranging from their 30s to their 60s, all trying to rebuild lives that had been shattered by betrayal, false accusations, or legal systems that didn't care about their stories. My name is Elliot, I said, and I spent 3 years raising a son who wasn't biologically mine, while my wife systematically destroyed everything I'd built. I told them about the hospital, about the blood tests that revealed the truth, about the friend who'd been blackmailed into silence, about the father who'd been manipulated into cutting me out of his will, about the $2,500 a month I'd be paying for the next 14 years for a child another man had fathered. The system failed me, I said, but I'm still here, still building, still fighting. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Tasha got primary custody of Leo with supervised visitation for me every other weekend. I got stuck with the debt she'd accumulated, though we'd managed to prove enough fraud to avoid some of it. She got to keep her agency, her social media following, her carefully curated image of the successful businesswoman. Adrian Rhodes got 18 months in prison for embezzlement. Small victory, but I'd take it. I'd moved to a smaller apartment in Fremont, started rebuilding my client base one relationship at a time. The anonymous emails had damaged my reputation, but truth had a way of surfacing. Clients who really knew me had stayed. New ones came through referrals from people who respected how I'd handled the crisis. Derek Fisher and I were rebuilding our friendship slowly. Some wounds take time to heal, but we were getting there. Audrey called every Sunday now. Family dinners had resumed, though my mother and I maintained a careful distance. Some relationships don't survive certain betrayals, even when they're rooted in blood. I still saw Leo. Those supervised visits were the hardest part of my week and the best part all at once. He was 4 now, started to form full sentences, to have opinions about things. He still called me Daddy. I didn't know how long that would last, didn't know what Tasha was telling him about why we didn't live together anymore. But I showed up. Every other weekend, I was there. Because biology might not have made me his father, but love and consistency did. And whatever else Tasha had stolen from me, she couldn't take that. So what now? One of the guys in the group asked. What's next for you? I thought about that question a lot lately. What comes after your world falls apart? After the woman you loved turns out to be someone you never really knew? After the system designed to protect families instead protects the person who destroyed yours? Now I build something new, I said. Not the life I thought I'd have. Not the family I planned for. But something real, something honest, something that can't be stolen because it's built on truth instead of illusions. I'd started a blog. Anonymous like so many others, but honest. Stories about navigating divorce, about paternity fraud, about rebuilding after betrayal. Men reached out daily, sharing their own stories, finding community in shared pain. I'd also started consulting with other men going through divorces, helping them document everything, avoid the mistakes I'd made, protect themselves before it was too late, turning my nightmare into something useful. Tasha was still out there, still posting her perfect life on Instagram, still running her agency. But I'd heard through the grapevine that clients were starting to ask questions, that her engagement numbers were dropping, that the polish was showing some tarnish. Karma works slowly sometimes. but works. As I left the support group that night, Derek was waiting outside. "Beer?" he asked. "Yeah, beer sounds good." We walked through Ballard streets, past the breweries and restaurants full of people living their ordinary lives. And I realized something. I was going to be okay. Not today, maybe not for a while, but eventually. Because the strongest foundation you can build isn't made of money or status or perfect families. It's made of resilience, truth, and the refusal to let someone else's betrayal define your worth. Tasha had taken a lot from me, but she hadn't taken that. And in the end, that was the only thing that really mattered.